Episode 27, The Eastern Reach. The Eastern Reach lay 3 days' hard ride from Thornhaven, but Elena made it in 2. The royal coach rattled through countryside, where the ley lines flickered like dying stars beneath the earth, visible to her trained sight as sickly pulses of corrupted magic. Ambassador Celeste Wintermere sat across from her, exhausted features drawn tight with worry that hadn't eased since they'd departed at dawn 2 days ago. "The evacuation of Silverspire is complete," Celeste said, reviewing the latest dispatch that had caught up with them at the last way station. 5,000 refugees, most headed for the capital. But Ironhold won't last the week. The wards there are fragmenting faster than our magisters can patch them. Elena studied the map spread across her lap, noting the pattern of failures. The Eastern Reach's ward stones formed a network similar to Ardenvale's, but older, some dating back 4 centuries. The collapse was systematic, moving from the outer territories inward like a tightening noose. "How many cities have you lost?" 7 confirmed fallen, 3 more on the brink. Celeste's voice cracked slightly. 23,000 dead in the last month alone. The shadow spawn they're different from what our histories describe. Faster, more coordinated, as if something is directing them. Elena thought of the Voidweaver, sealed but conscious within the 74. Was it reaching out somehow, testing other kingdoms' defenses? Or was this simply what happened when ancient wards failed? Chaos pouring through the cracks in reality. She touched the leather satchel at her side, feeling the weight of Seraphina's journals within. The forbidden knowledge pressed against her consciousness like a physical burden. She'd read them 3 more times during the journey. Memorizing not just the theoretical framework, but Seraphina's warnings, her regrets, her ultimate choice to reject the darkest solution. Trading one prison for another solves nothing. But what if the alternative was watching thousands die? What if the Eastern Reach's collapse destabilized the entire continental ley line network, accelerating the degradation of Cassian's ceiling? 57 years could become 30, 20, less. "Tell me about your magisters," Elena said. "How many have you lost to the corruption?" Celeste's expression darkened. 14. They tried to reinforce the wards using conventional techniques, pushing more power through failing channels. The backlash. She swallowed hard. The corruption spread so fast. We had to execute 3 of them before they completely transformed. The others died in the attempt. 14 mages dead trying to do what Cassian had done with forbidden magic. The mathematics were brutal. Conventional magic required massive power expenditure and left the caster vulnerable to backlash. Anathema-class techniques made the practitioner both source and cost, avoiding the debt that fed entities like the Voidweaver, but corrupting the caster's essence in the process. Cassian had survived because he'd channeled the power of 73 souls and accepted total transformation. These Eastern Reach magisters had tried to fight corruption with pure force and paid the price. "Your king requested knowledge of what Cassian did," Elena said carefully. "But I need you to understand what that knowledge means. The techniques he used aren't just forbidden, they're corrosive. Learning them changes you. Practicing them corrupts you. Using them in the field." She thought of Cassian's frozen form, the steady pulse of corruption patterns that were all that remained of his voice. "There's a reason we call it the price of power. Our people are dying," Celeste said quietly. "Our cities are falling. If there's even a chance—" "There's always a chance," Elena interrupted, "but it comes with a cost you can't imagine until you've paid it. I've watched Cassian pay it for 4 months now. I've documented every stage of his degradation, every memory he's lost, every piece of himself that's been consumed by the working. He saved our kingdom, but he'll never see another sunrise, never taste food again, never hold his sister or tell her he loves her. He exists in frozen time, conscious but trapped for 3 centuries. The coach rattled over rough road. Outside, the landscape was changing. Fewer farms, more abandoned homesteads. Signs of the Eastern Reach's crisis were visible even here, miles from the worst affected areas. "I'm not asking you to make another Cassian," Celeste said. "But maybe there are other applications, smaller workings, ways to use the principles without requiring total sacrifice." Elena thought of Seraphina's journals, the carefully documented stages of corruption practice. First-tier techniques that required only minor self-sacrifice. Second-tier that demanded more, but remained survivable. It was the third tier, the anathema-class workings Cassian had used, that required everything. Maybe, Elena admitted, but even the smallest corruption techniques are seductive. Serafina Thornweave wrote about it, how the power feels good, how you start finding excuses to use it more, how the line between necessity and desire blurs. She practiced first-tier corruption for years and nearly lost herself to it. Only her love for Kale kept her from crossing into the truly forbidden. And yet she developed the theory to free him, Celeste said softly. The technique you carry in those journals, the one that would trade his prison for hers. Elena's hand tightened on the satchel. She hadn't mentioned that part to anyone except Verena and Liana. How do you know about that? Ambassador Wintermere wasn't just a diplomatic title. Celeste's eyes held the weight of someone who'd studied forbidden lore herself. My kingdom has its own sealed archives, its own forbidden histories. We know what the first keeper discovered. We know what choice she made, and what choice she didn't make. The coach crested a hill, and the Eastern Reach's capital came into view. Stormwatch was smaller than Thornhaven, but no less impressive, built into the side of a mountain, with defensive walls that had stood for 5 centuries. But even from this distance, Elena could see the wrongness. Sections of wall that flickered with unstable magic. Guard towers where the protective wards sparked and died. The palace is at the summit, Celeste said. King Edric is expecting us. He'll want to know what help Ardenvale can offer. Elena studied the city, her trained sight picking out the ley line convergence beneath the palace. The lines were badly corrupted, pulsing with the same sickly light she'd seen in the countryside. But there was something else, a pattern to the corruption that seemed almost deliberate. The shadow spawn aren't just manifesting randomly, she said slowly. They're targeting the ley line nodes specifically, trying to collapse the network from within. Celeste leaned forward. Can you see that? Our magisters suspected, but... I've spent 4 months studying corruption patterns, Elena said. Learning to read them, interpret them, understand them. Cassian communicates through his corruption now. It's all he has left. I've learned to see the language in it. She pointed to a section of wall where the wards were failing. There, the corruption is spreading along the ley line, not just manifesting on the surface. Something is using the lines themselves as pathways, corrupting them from within. That's why conventional reinforcement fails. You're trying to push power through channels that are already compromised. So what do we do? Celeste's voice held desperate hope. First, I need to examine the ley line convergence at the palace, map the corruption pattern, understand how it's spreading. Elena met the ambassador's eyes. Then we'll know what's possible with conventional techniques, and what isn't. The unspoken hung between them. And if conventional techniques aren't enough, then we face the choice Serafina faced. The choice Cassian made. The choice I'm terrified I'll have to make. The coach descended toward Stormwatch's gates. Guards in Eastern Reach, blue and silver, checked their credentials with nervous efficiency. The streets beyond were crowded with refugees, families with bundled possessions, children with hollow eyes, magisters with the exhausted look of those who'd fought battles they couldn't win. Elena thought of Thornhaven 4 months ago. Shadow spawn pouring through failed wards, conventional magic proving useless against the Voidweaver's manifestation. She thought of Cassian descending into the catacombs, consuming Kale Thornweave's crystallized soul, channeling the power of 73 ancient mages through his corrupted body. She thought of the choice that had saved her kingdom and destroyed the man who'd made it. I will not let that be the only answer, she promised herself. There has to be another way. But as the coach climbed toward the palace, and she felt the corrupted ley lines pulsing beneath the city, Elena wondered if the universe cared about what she wanted. Sometimes the only choice was between terrible options. Sometimes saving lives required sacrificing everything. Serafina had faced that choice and walked away, choosing to build a life instead of becoming a living prison. But Serafina had been one keeper trying to free one imprisoned soul. Elena was one keeper trying to save an entire kingdom and prevent her own kingdom's savior from having died in vain. The mathematics were brutal. The timeline was impossible. And somewhere, 3 days' ride away, Cassian's corruption patterns continued their steady pulse, holding back the Voidweaver while slowly forgetting who he'd been. 9-9, he'd signaled as she left. She still didn't know what it meant. The palace gates opened before them, and Elena stepped out of the coach into a kingdom on the edge of collapse. King Edric waited at the top of the marble steps, a man in his 60s with iron-gray hair and eyes that had seen too much death. "Keeper Brightwater," he said, his voice carrying the weight of desperate hope. "Thank you for coming. We need." He stopped, swaying slightly. Elena moved forward instinctively as the king's guards rushed to support him. But she'd already seen the problem. Dark veins spreading up his neck, visible even in the afternoon light. Corruption. Advanced stage. The king himself was infected. "How long?" Elena asked quietly. Edric met her eyes with grim acceptance. 3 days since the backlash. I was leading the reinforcement working at Ironhold when the wards collapsed. The corruption spread through the entire working circle. I'm the only one who survived. Survived, Elena repeated, looking at the spreading darkness beneath his skin. 3 days meant he had perhaps a week before the corruption consumed him completely. Less if he tried to use magic again. The Eastern Reach's king was dying, and with him, any hope of organizing a conventional defense. Celeste's hand found Elena's arm gripping tight. "Please," the ambassador whispered. "There has to be something in those journals, some technique, some working, some way to save him." Elena thought of Serafina's careful documentation of corruption stages, of the theoretical technique to transfer the Voidweaver to a new prison, of the price that would be paid and the choice that would be made. She thought of Cassian's frozen form, consciousness trapped in stopped time, slowly losing his memories and identity over 3 centuries of holding back chaos. She thought of 57 years, possibly less, before that ceiling failed and the Voidweaver broke free. And she thought of the promise she'd made to Lyanna, standing in the Grand Hall as dawn broke. "I'll find a way. I swear it." A way that doesn't require anyone else to give everything. But standing in the Eastern Reach's palace, watching their dying king struggle to remain upright, feeling the corrupted ley lines pulsing beneath her feet like infected wounds in reality itself, Elena wondered if such a way existed. Or if the universe only offered terrible choices, and the best anyone could do was choose which terrible price to pay. "Let me examine the ley line convergence," she said finally. "Map the corruption pattern, then we'll know what we're dealing with. And then," she thought but didn't say, "we'll know what price has to be paid, and who will pay it." Behind her, visible through the palace gates, Stormwatch's outer wards flickered and died. Somewhere in the distance, screams rose as shadow spawn manifested in the streets. The Eastern Reach was falling, the continental ley line network was destabilizing, and Elena carried in her satchel the knowledge of how to stop it, at a cost that would destroy whoever paid it. She followed King Edric into the palace, Serafina's journals heavy against her side, and prayed she could find an answer the First Keeper had missed. Because if she couldn't, someone would have to make Cassian's choice all over again. And this time, it might be her.
Thanks for watching our stories. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more epic adventures. Thanks for watching our stories. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more epic adventures.